welcome to the A Bit of AI show with your hosts, Henk and Amy.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the 15th A Bit of AI show. My name is Henk Boelman. I'm a white male with brown hair, wearing glasses, and today I'm wearing a dark gray shirt with the logo of Microsoft AI on it.
And hi everyone, my name's Amy. I'm a female with blonde hair and I'm wearing a black short-sleeved top today. And Henk, you forgot to mention our 15th show. It's actually our final show for the season. This is our season finale.
Yes, it is the 15th show, the final season, the final episode of the season, but we will be back in September. Yeah. So, once again, welcome to the final A Bit of AI show. And this show is all about the story from the people behind AI. In our job, we meet many people from around the globe and we realize that there are so many different skilled people involved in creating an AI solution, from pre-sales consultancy to actually creating the deep neural networks and running them in production. So in this show, we invite people from all over the world that are professionals in the AI space to have a chat and talk about what they're doing during the week. So this is the 15th and last episode of season 1, and we couldn't be more excited to start talking to our guests and learn more about what they do. So in this show we have 2 items. We start with our guest, Kenji, to chat about his life in AI, and finally we dive into the AI Learning Challenge of the week. And as always, all links and information can be found on our website, abitofai.show.
Amazing. And don't forget, this will be our last and final A Bit of AI Cafe of the season. It's a friendly environment for 30 minutes after the live show where you can come and ask questions of our guests as well as myself and Henk. So yeah, if you go to ak.ms/abitofai-cafe, or you can just click a link above if you're watching on our website.
Perfect, so let's not waste any time anymore and start and invite Kenji to the stage.
Hi folks.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good, thank you. Yeah. And I'm a Japanese guy wearing a pink polo shirt, and I've got long lockdown hair. So great to see.
I was going to say, your speaker shot does look slightly different now to what you look like on camera. So thank you for doing that explanation for us. We do that for accessibility purposes. And also, this is a podcast as well. So actually, when someone's listening in, maybe they can get a better sense of kind of who we are if you're not watching along live. But welcome, Kenji. It's such a treat to have you on the show for our final episode. But it's not about our episode. It's actually all about you. So tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi, yeah, I'm Kenji Takeda. I work for Microsoft Research. So we're the part of Microsoft that really does the really deep thinking about the future. And so I'm based in our research lab in Cambridge, UK. And I'm a director of academic AI and health partnerships. So a research program manager. So I used to be deeply technical, used to write code, program supercomputers and things like that. But now I work as a research PM, really sort of trying to help and empower our research teams.
Fabulous. Gosh, there's so much we need to unpick, but something that we always ask our guests is to get a better sense of, what have you got yourself into, Kenji? Like, what does the day-to-day job look like? Can you kind of describe an average day in your life?
Sure, yeah. I mean, research is amazing. It's really fun. It's exciting, which I guess is sometimes a euphemism for challenging. But yeah, so, it's a bit of a, cliche, I guess, but it is pretty different every day. And AI research is very multifaceted. So yeah, as a PM, like I said, we have teams in research actually that multidisciplinary teams, particularly in the Cambridge lab in the health intelligence team, where we have machine learning experts We also have sort of designers, user experience people, social scientists, take a very human-centric view of AI, because that's critically important, because that's ultimately what it's all about. And so my job really, I guess one way of thinking about it is to try and sort of join dots, make sure people are able to work together, people are able to progress a lot, create new opportunities maybe. So a lot of that is actually talking to people, and that's talking to people, emailing people, do a lot of PowerPoint, a lot of Excel, Word docs, that kind of thing. So not really in the Visual Studio as much as I'd like to be. And yeah, so a lot of it is actually kind of joining dots. And then, one of the things that I feel very passionate about really is that as a research PM is to try and just make sure that the research teams are able to really do the research, in the best possible way, as fast as possible, and sort of unblock them and make sure that their path is as smooth as possible, which again is fun and exciting, and can be frustrating at times. Not because of our research team, but just because of the whole ecosystem and how we develop AI, which over the last few episodes, you've had lots of people talk about that. So so every day is really great. I'll come in thinking I want to do all these things today, and I'll try and do as many of them as I can, but stuff comes in from all over the place. But it does make it interesting, for sure. Yeah, so it's always fun.
Oh, amazing. And yeah, Kenji, I've worked with you for quite a few years, really, now, having been at Microsoft for quite a few years myself. And that's kind of always been the case. I've always seen you as someone who's kind of like a connector. You're someone that networks incredibly well. It's a wonderful skill to have at Microsoft as well. You definitely need that. But you mentioned kind of this communication element, joining the dots. You also work quite a lot with open source communities, right? Is a lot of what you work on open source, and can you tell us a bit about what's the gap between open source and product in the space of research, for example?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it's really interesting because Microsoft as a company that really supports the organizations all over the planet, and with a huge array of products which are fully supported, and big engineering teams making sure that those things work really, really well. Within research, our job really is to kind of explore the boundaries of what's possible, and so in doing that, we're doing a lot of prototyping. Really, and there's a big difference between a prototype and something that's in production, running in a company with 100,000 people, or running in a hospital, helping patients. So it is this sort of path from research through to a production deployment. We talk a lot about what are called technology readiness levels. So sort of 9 technology readiness levels. 1 really is an idea, write an idea down on a piece of paper. 9 is, in production, and so, in Microsoft Research, we're really at the lower end of the technology readiness levels. Microsoft products are at the other end. And, there is this gap in the middle, and it's well known, this innovation gap of how do you get research prototypes into production. Right, and so Microsoft as a company is quite interesting because we span the entire spectrum from sort of TRL1. We work with PhD students, interns. Really kind of fundamental new ideas, right through to products like Teams, Excel, Azure. Really millions and millions of people using them, and actually all in one organization. And when you think about a research ecosystem, I do a lot of work kind of advising research funding agencies, particularly in the UK, is actually those bits of the pipeline actually live in different organizations. So the research usually lives in a university, then often you'll have startups, that try and create something, and you have the big enterprises at the other end that are really running at scale, right? And so actually this translates, startup might then, get acquired by a big company, So it's interesting that for the government, it's really challenging. We see this in healthcare. Particularly, of how do you cross the chasm, as it's known, from research prototypes. So open source is a really interesting tool because it allows people to pick up some of these research prototypes and kind of run with them. And it means for us as research, we learn a lot because we want people contributing to the code base as well. So, but as I'm sure most of it's really hard. 99% of open source projects don't actually really have a huge following. So it is pretty challenging. But fortunate at Microsoft, really all in on open source. And so that's a fun part of my job, actually, is that community aspect, which I love.
Yeah, no, I love that. And as you said, thank you for describing those areas. I've never really thought of it in that way. And that does kind of segment it in that sense that there is all these different types of technology. And yeah, in the last few of our episodes, a few people have been stretching over, I guess, the machine learning element now more going into production in enterprises and business situations. That production level ready code and system for these machine learning models is really, really important to them. So they're like further along that spectrum in some senses, to make sure that it's production worthy. I also wanted to talk to you because obviously you're into healthcare and AI. That's a sort of passion area of yours as well within research. Can you tell us about anything exciting that you're working on at the moment that you can tell us about?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, the sort of project I'm really focused on right now is in sort of the medical imaging AI space. So supporting our project in our team in Cambridge. Project's been going for about last decade. I actually just celebrated my 10-year anniversary of being at Microsoft, so it's basically been ongoing for my entire time at Microsoft. And I wasn't really involved at the start, but got involved in the project a few years ago. And it's really interesting because it's a fantastic team that's really evolved over the years, worked on lots and lots of different things. And then a few years ago, again, taking this kind of human-centric view and talking to clinicians is trying to find a problem that is both going to have some impact, patient benefit, but also is kind of a tractable problem for ML. So one of the challenges I think in anything, is asking the right question, right? Once you know the question, you can answer it. If you don't know the right question, you're definitely not going to find the answer because you know what you're trying to answer. So the inner TI team working with lots of different folks, particularly with our collaborators at Adam Brooks Hospital in Cambridge, focused on this cancer treatment area. So radiotherapy is one of the ways that you can treat a cancer. There are sort of 3 or 4 types of treatment, chemotherapy with drugs, surgery where you might cut out a tumor, and then immunotherapy, which is sort of relatively new sort of drug therapy, and then radiotherapy where you basically zap the tumor DNA with very powerful X-rays. And one of the parts of that process is that the patient will go in and have a CT scan, imaging scan, and then a clinician has to kind of look at each picture and draw around the tumor, draw around the organs around the tumor that you don't want to get hit with the rays. That takes like ages. It can take hours for like a consultant oncologist, right? And so we focused on that and said, can we use computer vision AI to try and pick out, the tumor and say the bones next to it and different organs and things. So again, many years, and then recently switched to deep learning, and then the team published really a landmark paper in November showing the efficacy of this, and then open source the technology. So what I'm doing now really is helping other organizations use the open source for their own purposes. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. And again, this open sourcing of the research has really unlocked a huge amount of potential. So we're really trying to at the cusp of people taking that and moving forwards with it. So.
Nice. What an exciting time as well in that decade of this happening, this project kind of being a part, that it's got to that point where it's really moving up that spectrum that you talked about into this open source sort of toolkit type style, as you said, not product but toolkit that people can go and use. That's really exciting in some senses. And so you go.
I was going to say, just literally hot off the presses as well. And sometimes people say, it takes a decade to be an overnight success. Just yesterday, actually, NHSX announced £36 million of funding for AI projects. And our partners at Adam Brooks Hospital actually got a grant to take the InnerEye open source toolkit. They're going to then build their own machine learning models on that using their own data from their own hospital. But they're critically going to then have that certified as a medical device. So other NHS hospitals are going to be able to use that. And so again, really, it's where the research we've done is the open source toolkit, and then one of our partners, Adam Brooks Hospital, is going to actually take it, the last mile, basically, because in healthcare, any intervention, be that digital or otherwise, has to, be approved at the relevant level of a regulatory approval. And that's what Adam Brooks is going to do. And that really is that last mile, because then once that's done, it's proved to be, good and safe and fully documented. And so, like, literally, I wasn't sure whether that would be public before today, but literally yesterday it was announced. I'm really excited that Adam Brooks, has got this NHSX AI award to use the open source. It's fantastic to benefit, cancer patients across the NHS.
Amazing. Well, maybe we can have you on for future seasons of A Bit of AI and hear even more about how quickly, I'm sure, progression will happen once you have that. But yeah, no, very, very exciting. Thank you for sharing a bit about Inner Eye. Is there a place where someone can go? To go and can we see it? Like, is that something we can go browse?
If you just do a web search on sort of Project Inner Eye Microsoft, it will go to the website. We actually did a webinar about it in January, and there's also an 8-minute kind of video there as well, so you can kind of learn about it there. And most importantly, developers out there, go hit the GitHub, check it out. It's all one of the great things is we're able to just take advantage of Azure machine learning to train these models at scale on GPUs and things. So it's check out the website, like I say, Project Inner Eye, Microsoft sort of search for that, and then from there you can get to videos, get to the GitHub, see the papers and blog posts and all sorts. So have fun with that.
Great.
Oh, that's great. I will put them on the website too, with in the show notes. So now we know what you do.
Yeah.
In the last few weeks, or in the last actually years. But how did you get to this stage in your career? What did you study? What career changes did you go through?
Sure. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's been a bit of I guess with anyone, a bit of a journey. One of the things, when I was at school, one of the best bits of advice somebody told me about careers was most people have 3 careers in their lifetime. And so first career is obviously important, but don't worry too much. You might end up somewhere different, So I started out at school. Well, as a kid, I loved airplanes. You can see some airplanes in the background there. And I was lucky enough that I thought I wanted to do some sort of sciencey type subject, and so I ended up doing engineering. I ended up doing aeronautics and astronautics, so airplanes and spaceships. Basically, did that at University of Southampton. Ended up doing a PhD as well in computer simulation of airflow, sort of aerodynamics, computational fluid dynamics. So that was interesting. And then I sort of just kind of carried on doing the research. So I kept on at the university as a postdoc researcher. And that's actually where I moved into supercomputing. So I was using supercomputers for my PhD, and then ended up kind of supporting some of the UK national supercomputer capabilities and stuff like that, doing lots of software development. So it's kind of interesting back then, we're looking at how do you scale a code to 100,000 cores, right? And having to pass messages individually, like code the individual message passing, right? So it's pretty hardcore, good fun. Doing aerodynamics, and then because I was doing that, did a lot of work with Formula One teams. It was a lot of fun. A lot of work with Airbus. A lot of work with Microsoft actually on supercomputing, and then with the whole cloud thing coming along. I actually then moved to Microsoft Research 10 years ago. They basically said, hey, do you want to, we've been collaborating. So I've been collaborating with Microsoft Research for many, many years. And they said, hey, do you want to come work for us? So I said, yeah, that sounds interesting. So this is my second career. So it's 2 decades at University of Southampton. I've now been a decade at Microsoft. But even then I wasn't doing AI. Did a lot of work with environmental science. We had a sort of program trying to work with the environmental science community, actually, and one of the privileges was actually working with Lucas Dropper on that, trying to map endangered species across the world. And so, I like to think, some of the work we did kind of helped, get Lucas thinking about this whole AI for sustainability thing. So it was really fun, amazing guy, Lucas, privileged to work with him. Did a really fun project around F#. So if you've not checked out F#, fantastic language, functional first programming language. We built actually one of the first browser-based coding platforms called Try F#. And now that's kind of fairly common, but back then that was brand new. And then after that, it was kind of, what do I do next? And then sort of there was this big groundswell around healthcare at Microsoft and Microsoft Research. Basically, how can Microsoft contribute more into the healthcare space? And that was my journey, really. One of the things I like to think is, AI, big computers, parallel computers, distributed computing. And then the other thing, of course, is, I did tensors in my first year undergrad, because linear algebra is just, second year undergrad. My second year computing project was singular value decomposition, right? So that was just like the most basic computing we did was like SVD. So actually, computing, linear algebra, that stuff. So it's kind of interesting, the AI stuff. Whilst I don't go deep into it, I have a real appreciation around how hard it is. So yeah, it's been a real journey, actually. So I'm in my sort of first decade at Microsoft. I don't know, second decade, I feel like healthcare is kind of, great to have impact there. So yeah, we'll see where it goes. But yeah, really, honored, privileged to work with the great colleagues here at Microsoft, and great colleagues out in the research ecosystem too.
Oh, that's so cool. I really love how everyone's story is so different. So, but it sounded a lot of fun, everything you do. But there must be also something that you find really annoying about your role in AI.
I mean, I have a lot of fun day to day. There's obviously some ups and downs. It's mainly ups. I guess it's maybe not my role, but one of the things, I guess, and it's the same in technology generally, is this kind of hype cycle, right? I mean, everything is kind of AI, and AI is fantastic, but then you say, well, what is AI? Is it machine learning? Is it robotics? Is it, and you sort of drill down, and people have this broad brush of AI. You have to explain, it's not artificial general intelligence we're doing narrow AI, it's actually machine learning, And so I think one of the things is just this whole hype around AI, and it'll settle down, the usual hype cycle. We were talking about big data a few years ago, right? And all these things evolve, right? It's fundamentally, AI, big data, data science. It's all, they're all sort of subsets, supersets of each other. So I think that's one of the things. Us, at Microsoft Research, we like to talk about our work once we've kind of published something and it's been proven to some extent or peer reviewed. And so I guess one of the frustration things is, some people announce like before they've started doing something, and so we're always, I guess I was like a bit humbler in terms of, but actually just much more grounded in terms of when we talk about something, we actually want to really have all the evidence behind it. And so again, this whole sort of hype around AI can be a little bit annoying, just in terms of like seeing what other people are talking about, and and especially like when you're doing it yourself, and then you dig deep and you sort of say, well, I haven't actually done much yet, and then we've done more than them, but we're not chatting about it. But that's because, again, we want to wait until we've actually got the proof. So it's because literally at Microsoft Research, some of the best AI people in the world, both in Cambridge and across the world, and so it's fantastic just to be part of that. So yeah, like these things, these things, it's just the hype cycle, right? So it's just natural. We see this all the time, right? So, but
I love that. I think it's interesting that you're from the place that you're at as well in research, and again that kind of spectrum that you drew out, that we actually are hearing that from a lot of people. That response to that question has been something that's quite frequent. Whether it's in consultancy where they have to turn their hand to any technology that they're asked to, sort of thing, and expectations and stuff like that, all the way to this end of the spectrum as well. So thank you for sharing that, because I think that's useful for us to understand. It's not just happening in one place, like it really is a sort of a thing across the whole AI space. Okay, so we only have a few minutes left, but it's okay because we're going to have a very quick fire round, quick-fire round. So double quick that. So what we're going to do, Kenji doesn't know the questions that we're going to ask him. So your immediate answer, Kenji, is what is the sort of the first thing that comes into your head is going to give us a lot of information about kind of similarities and differences. Myself and Henk are going to alternate questions, and if we can keep the answers to no longer than a sentence, and then we'll discuss at the end. Does that sound good?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so the first one is quite an easy one. I think you alluded to it already, but what was your first programming language?
Oh, it would have been basic Sinclair ZX81.
And what programming language was used in the last project you worked on?
Oh my gosh, last project I actually cut code on was probably Fortran.
Nice.
Running
Good
on some
stuff.
big supercomputers. Yeah.
Amazing. And what was the last thing you learnt in AI?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. Yeah, so self-supervised learning. Yeah, that's the latest thing I'm reading up on. Inner Team's doing some cool stuff on that.
Self-supervised learning. Everyone note that one down. Let's do some research.
Yes, favorite event in the AI calendar?
That's a tricky one. I like small events. I would do a shout out actually to my friends at One Health Tech, because they run some fantastic events, not just AI, but just building diverse and inclusive community in healthcare. So Maxi Mac, Indra Joshi out there, doing a great job.
Wonderful. Oh, good stuff. We like that. We always like to hear about new events as well on the show. What area of AI is on your list to skill up on next? So we always have our laundry list, don't we, of things we want to learn. Is there anything you're keeping your eye on?
Well, I think this big new thing, sort of federated learning, is really exciting. And again, it's kind of early days, so trying to get my head around that. Definitely.
Cool. And final question, what training framework did you use last?
Okay, so PyTorch is really what we're using on InnerEye, and actually excitingly sort of PyTorch Lightning, which is the sort of latest developments on that to just make it a bit smoother and less boilerplate.
Nice. Our friend Ari, who we had on the show, will be very happy to hear he's a big fan of PyTorch Lightning. Wonderful. Well, Kenji, unfortunately, that is all we've got time for. Everyone, do remember you can join us in the A Bit of AI Cafe straight after the show if you have further questions for Kenji. I certainly do, so get yourself in there early, otherwise I'll just be chatting the whole time. But with that, Kenji, we'll say goodbye to you in a few minutes.
Thanks very much, everyone. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Right. Bye.
Cool, so that brings us to the last few minutes of the first season of A Bit of AI. And I think you should share the challenge of this week.
The challenge of this week, InnerEye, as Kenji mentioned, uses Azure Machine Learning, he told us. And so I thought I would do a theme around Azure Machine Learning. So we have 4 modules. We've got Introduction to, so if you're new to it, you can still get involved. How to train an ML model using Azure Machine Learning. How to detect and mitigate unfairness with Azure Machine Learning. Obviously, Kenji's working in the space of healthcare. It's incredibly important in all spaces, but healthcare is obviously a huge one that we see examples of. And then explain ML models with Azure Machine Learning. So 4 quite interesting topics. I highly recommend getting involved. And actually, you can go to aka.ms/a-bit-of-ai-learn to find that. I blanked out a little bit there. Apologies. It's because I'm getting so emotional because that's it. We are wrapping up our last show of season 1. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you if you've joined us for other parts of our season. If you want to go back and see any of the shows that we've done before, if this is the first time you've seen us, you can just go to abitofai.show to find all of the on-demand content. And as I said, join us in the cafe, A Bit of AI-cafe, or click at the top of our website as well to find that. But that's all from us. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you soon. This has been A Bit of AI with Henk and Amy.